So, what if the most profound piece of dietary science isn't hidden inside some 100-page medical journal?
Right, like we usually see.
Yeah, exactly. What if it's just in a single 21-word sentence? Welcome, everyone, to today's custom-tailored deep dive into your sources. And today brings us face-to-face with a document that, honestly, it kind of completely redefines how we analyze nutrition.
It really does. It's wild.
Yeah, so the file we are looking at today is titled Sugar-Free Natural Eating Habits Podcast Script.docupx. And going into this, I was expecting complex charts, maybe some longitudinal studies, but instead we found a document that reads like an absolute dietary
A
manifesto.
manifesto is the perfect word for it, honestly.
Right, because it consists of just one highly concentrated thesis statement. And here's the crazy part. It is repeated 75 times in a row.
Just, yeah, back to back to back.
No exposition, no filler at all, just a relentless hammering of a single core truth, stripping away all the noise of the modern diet industry to just present this foundational rule.
And, seeing a statement repeated with that level of intensity, well, it forces an immediate recalibration of how we consume information
Oh, absolutely.
because it completely strips away the option to skim. You
Yeah.
can't just glance at it. The repetition acts as like a spotlight, demanding that we parse the exact phrasing being used.
Because every single syllable matters.
Right. Every syllable has been chosen to carry this massive amount of physiological weight.
So the sentence we're dissecting today is this, quote, choosing naturally nutritious foods while reducing added sugar can improve overall diet quality, support stable energy, and healthy weight management, end quote.
That's it.
That is the entirety of the source material. So our mission today is to essentially place this sentence under a microscope. We are going to examine the precise mechanisms connecting the inputs we feed our bodies to the systemic long-term outputs of our health. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Because starting at the very beginning of the statement is critical. It establishes a non-negotiable prerequisite.
Right, the input phase.
Exactly. Before the text promises any metabolic or physical adaptations, it outlines an input protocol that requires two simultaneous actions.
Yeah, the text explicitly pairs choosing naturally nutritious foods with reducing added sugar. And this immediate duality is really interesting to me. I was thinking about it, and managing your diet is less like strict deprivation and a lot more like managing an investment portfolio or a bank account.
Oh, that's a great way to frame it.
Right. Because if you simply stop spending capital on junk, which in this context is reducing added sugar, you halt the active bleeding of your resources. You aren't digging a deeper hole for
They're
yourself.
stopping the damage.
Exactly. But merely stopping the bleed doesn't actually build wealth. To actually generate a return, you simultaneously have to invest in like dividend yielding currency, which are the naturally nutritious foods.
That makes total sense.
But let me push back on this dual requirement for a second. Does the biology actually demand both of those simultaneously? Or is the source just throwing a wide net? Like if someone were to focus purely on the reduction side, wouldn't that still trigger the physiological benefits?
What's fascinating here is the specific use of the conjunction, while.
Ah, right.
Yeah, choosing naturally nutritious foods while reducing added sugar. That single word implies a mandatory, completely symbiotic relationship.
So you really can't have one without the other.
Not if you want it to work long term. Because if you merely cut out added sugar, you are removing a highly volatile, rapidly metabolized substrate that, let's be honest, your central nervous system has likely become entirely dependent on.
For those quick dopamine hits, right?
Exactly, dopamine hits and rapid glucose spikes. So removing it leaves this massive biological void.
Wow, avoid.
Yeah, because your body still requires energy substrates, and your brain still desperately requires satiety signaling. If you don't actively fill that void with nutrient-dense foods like complex carbohydrates, essential fatty acids, amino acids, the central nervous system essentially triggers a panic response.
So it's really an issue of preventing a neurobiological rebound.
Precisely. Without the structural support of fiber, to activate the stretch receptors in your gut.
To physically feel full.
Right. Or the lipids and proteins to trigger satiety hormones, like cholecystokinin, the body basically interprets the sudden absence of sugar as starvation.
Which explains why diets fail so often.
Exactly. Cravings skyrocket, your leptin levels drop, and the behavioral drive to seek out hyperpalatable foods becomes completely overwhelming. So the naturally nutritious foods are the metabolic bridge that makes the reduction of sugar physically and psychologically sustainable for you.
You're swapping out a highly volatile fuel source for one that supports long-term metabolic flexibility.
Hit the nail on the head.
Okay, so that structural swap leads us directly into the first major outcome the source promises. If we successfully balance that portfolio, adding the nutrient-dense assets while liquidating the sugar, the text claims the immediate result is that we improve overall diet quality.
Yes, the first big domino.
Right. But I have to be honest, I initially whistled at this phrasing a bit.
Oh, really? Why?
Well, so what does this all mean? Overall diet quality sounds like a very vague, almost corporate wellness buzzword.
I could see that, yeah.
Why wouldn't a relentlessly repeated, hyper-concentrated source like this cut to the chase and promise something measurable, like, decrease of visceral fat or improved insulin sensitivity? Why anchor the entire physiological process to such a broad, abstract concept?
I get why you'd think that, but the phrasing might sound abstract, but it actually represents a highly specific paradigm shift. It's moving away from the reductionism that has really plagued dietary science for decades.
Reductionism, meaning oversimplifying things.
Yeah. Historically, nutrition has been marketed to us through isolated metrics. We are taught to look exclusively at, like, calorie counts, or to completely demonize fat, or to track macros with this mathematical obsession.
Right, if it fits your macros, that whole movement.
Exactly. But human metabolism does not process food in a mathematical vacuum. 100 calories of a processed sugar beverage and 100 calories of walnuts dictate completely, wildly different hormonal cascades in the body.
Because of the food matrix, the actual physical and chemical structure of the food dictates how the body interacts with it.
Yes. The food matrix is exactly what overall diet quality is measuring. When you consume a whole food, you aren't just consuming energy, you're consuming the cellular walls that slow down digestion.
The fiber.
Right, and the micronutrients that act as enzymatic cofactors, and the polyphenols that interact with your microbiome. By elevating overall diet quality to the primary outcome, the source completely rejects the idea that we can game our biology with heavily processed, artificially fortified alternatives just because they, fit our daily caloric allotment.
It asks us to look at the holistic synergy of our meal.
Exactly. It's the vital bridge between the food on your plate and the physical results in your body.
This framing actually removes a tremendous amount of anxiety from the equation for you, the listener.
It really does.
Because if the goal is overall quality, you don't have to operate with absolute flawless precision. You don't have to weigh every single gram of protein or panic over some minor deviation from your plan.
No, not at all.
You are cultivating an internal ecosystem. As long as the broader landscape of that ecosystem is rich in natural foods and low in artificial spikes, the system becomes resilient enough to handle occasional outliers.
That systemic resilience is the ultimate goal. When the diet quality is high, the body transitions from constantly putting out metabolic fires to actually optimizing its internal processes.
Okay, so if diet quality represents the internal architecture we are rebuilding, the immediate outward symptom of that architecture functioning properly is what happens to our daily physical output.
The experiential side of things.
Right. The text moves from the systemic to the experiential, stating that this improved quality will support stable energy. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, this is a big one.
Because in modern culture, we are so obsessed with high energy. We consume pre-workouts and triple-shot espressos explicitly to achieve this massive surge. But this foundational sentence ignores high energy entirely.
It completely ignores it.
To understand why stable is the superior metric, think of the metabolic system like a campfire.
Oh, campfire, okay.
Yes, so when you eat naturally nutritious foods, it's like putting a thick, dense log on the fire. It provides a slow, steady, stable burn that lasts for hours.
Right, a continuous output.
Exactly. Whereas relying on added sugar is like throwing a loose piece of newspaper into the flames. You get this huge, bright, impressive flash of fire.
But it burns out in seconds.
Exactly. A bright flash followed by an immediate dark crash. You have to keep throwing paper in just to keep the fire alive.
That is a perfect analogy. The physiological equivalent to throwing paper on the fire is the glycemic roller coaster.
The sugar crash.
Yeah, because when added sugar hits the bloodstream without the mitigating presence of fiber, without that thick log to slow it down, blood glucose spikes aggressively.
And the body panics.
It does. The pancreas overcompensates, releasing a massive surge of insulin to clear the glucose. And this overcorrection causes your blood sugar to plummet way below baseline.
Below where you even started.
Exactly. But the crucial detail here is how the body reacts to that plummet. It perceives hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, as an acute survival threat.
Wow.
In response, it dumps catecholamines, so
Yeah.
adrenaline and cortisol, into the bloodstream to mobilize stored glycogen.
Wait, so it's really an issue of mislabeling our own biology. We're confusing a systemic stress response with actual vitality.
Yes. This raises an important question about how often we mistake the temporary rush of added sugar for actual, sustainable bodily energy. That is the core deception of the modern diet.
That is wild.
The jittery, frantic sensation we associate with a sugar rush, or even the desperate attempt to pull ourselves out of a midday crash, is literally the feeling of stress hormones flooding our system.
It's a biochemical panic attack.
It is a biochemical panic attack. By focusing on stable energy, the source document is advocating for the thick log approach. You're relying on the steady oxidation of fatty acids and the slow, metered release of glucose from complex carbohydrates.
I also want to zero in on the specific verb the source uses here. It says the diet will support stable energy.
Support, yes.
It doesn't say it will generate or force it. When you say support, my mind goes to the fact that it implies our baseline is already energetic and the added sugar is actively suppressing it. Is that a fair assessment, or is sugar just a poor substitute for real fuel?
No, it is entirely a fair assessment. The human body evolved intricate, highly efficient mechanisms for maintaining energy homeostasis.
Hmm.
Your cellular mitochondria are perfectly capable of producing sustained energy output.
We're built for it.
We are. But chronic sugar consumption and the resulting insulin resistance effectively gunk up those mechanisms. It impairs metabolic flexibility, which is the body's ability to seamlessly switch between burning glucose and burning fat.
So we get stuck.
We get completely stuck. By improving diet quality, you are not artificially injecting energy into a broken system. You are removing the dietary interference. You are providing the biological environment necessary to support the natural baseline vitality that your body is already programmed to maintain.
Sustaining that smooth, continuous baseline of energy day after day eventually compounds, right? And that compounding effect brings us to the final clause of our source text.
The long-term result.
Exactly. If stable energy is the short-term daily reality, the long-term destination of this dietary practice is healthy weight management. And once again, we have to interrogate the vocabulary being used here.
It gets very deliberate.
Very. Because every piece of fitness marketing, every magazine cover, and every commercial screams about weight loss, dropping numbers, melting fat. Why does this single foundational sentence deliberately reject the concept of loss in favor of management?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the concept of weight loss reveals itself as an inherently temporary and often biologically combative trajectory.
Combative meaning fighting your own body.
Exactly. The human body interprets rapid weight loss as a threat to survival. When you engage in heavy caloric restriction, the metabolism actively slows down, a process known as adaptive thermogenesis, to conserve energy.
It thinks you're starving.
It absolutely thinks you're starving. Your hunger hormones increase and your satiety hormones decrease. A paradigm built entirely around loss implies a finite finish line, usually achieved through pure deprivation.
The classic yo-yo dieting cycle. You fight your own biology to hit an arbitrary number on a scale. Your willpower eventually gives out because your hormones are literally screaming at you to eat, and the weight just rushes back.
Management, on the other hand, implies arriving at a state of metabolic homeostasis. It perfectly parallels the concept of stable energy we were just talking about.
Right, maintaining the fire.
Yes. When your diet quality improves and your energy stabilizes, you begin to clear the chronic insulin resistance that blocks leptin. And leptin is the hormone that tells your brain you have enough stored energy.
So you actually feel full.
Naturally full. Once leptin sensitivity is restored, your brain naturally defends a leaner set point. Management means stepping off the battlefield. It means finding the physiological equilibrium where your body functions optimally without forced restriction or chronic hunger, and simply maintaining that natural state.
See, that is an incredibly empowering reframing for you, the listener. It fundamentally changes your relationship with food.
It really does.
You are no longer engaging in a daily battle of willpower against your own biochemistry. By pairing nutrient-dense foods with the reduction of volatile sugars, you are essentially stepping into the role of CEO of your own metabolic health.
I love that.
You are setting up the automated systems, the hormonal balance, and the stable blood sugar that make healthy weight management an effortless byproduct of your lifestyle rather than a daily struggle.
The weight management becomes the quiet background reality of a system functioning exactly as it was evolved to function.
So, looking at the entirety of this 21-word sentence, the structure is just brilliant. It operates conceptually like a cascade of physiological dominoes.
A perfect chain reaction.
Right. The initial catalyst is the dual action,
Yeah.
removing the volatile inputs while simultaneously supplying the structural, nutrient-dense assets. That action immediately alters the internal ecosystem, upgrading the holistic quality of the diet.
First domino falls.
Yep. That improved internal environment then alters your daily experiential output, shifting you away from stress-driven spikes and crashes towards smooth, sustainable, stable energy. And finally, that daily stability compounds over time to reset your metabolic set point, allowing for long-term, effortless weight management.
It really is a masterclass in biological cause and effect, all distilled into a single thought.
That's amazing.
But, as we wrap up our analysis, this source document leaves us with a highly personalized variable to consider.
Oh, what's that?
Well, the text explicitly calls for reducing added sugar. It notably refrains from demanding total elimination.
Right. It doesn't say zero sugar.
Exactly. And this raises an important question for you, the listener, to explore within your own physiology. Where exactly is your personal metabolic threshold?
Because metabolic flexibility varies wildly from person to person, right? Based on genetics, activity level, baseline muscle mass.
Precisely. At what specific point does reduced sugar cease to support stable energy and begin triggering that catecholamine stress response we talked about?
Where does the paper start burning too fast?
Right. Furthermore, how does the food matrix alter that threshold? Like, if you consume a small amount of added sugar, but it is deeply embedded within a meal containing 50 grams of dietary fiber and high-quality lipids, does your body manage the glycemic load without a spike?
Does a thick log absorb the flash of the paper?
Exactly. Finding that unique, highly individualized balance point is the practical application of this foundational rule.
It shifts the goalposts from chasing a rigid, mythical perfection to actively listening to your body's biological feedback. You're conducting an ongoing experiment with your own metabolism.
And that's where the real power is.
Absolutely. Well, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into what might be the most concentrated piece of dietary wisdom we've ever examined.
It's been a great one.
It really has. It proves that true health isn't a static snapshot or some temporary destination. It is a dynamic, living ecosystem that you manage and fuel every single day. Keep exploring your own thresholds, keep applying these mechanisms, and always keep questioning the information you consume. Take care, everyone.